This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening. I'd like to convene the Tuesday, April 24th, 2018 North Haven Fire Commission meeting. I'll ask for the approvals of the minute of the Board of Fire Commission dated 3/27/18.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. The Chief's report.
Chief's report for this month, I'm going to start with alarms. Year to date, as of 2017 at this time, we were at 1,372 alarms. This time this year, we're at 1,457. That's an increase of 85 alarms at this point. Since our last Board of Fire Commission meeting, we provided ALS intercept, meaning our paramedic has provided assistance to the hospital with the ambulance on 21 different occasions, and we transported on one occasion. We responded to the highway or limited access highways 13 different times since our last commission meeting. We're starting to see with the weather as it gets a little bit better. It's taking its time getting better, but nonetheless, we're starting to see a lot more significant MVAs. Motorcycle accident we've already had this year. So, you know, we're watching that. We'll be responding to the highway likely more in the summertime than we do in the wintertime. One thing that we're taking a lot of right now is a lot of burn complaints. And with the high fire danger that the state is currently in due to lack of rain, there is no burning to take place in town. So the burning ordinance, which can be found by calling the fire headquarters or looking online, and actually the website, the town website, you can search for it very easily. It very specifically has a burn ordinance within it, and there's a few things that can't take place. It cannot be a high wind advisory, it cannot be a poor health quality index, which we don't normally get until the real muggy summer months, and it cannot be a high fire danger. And that means you cannot burn in your chimney or a fire pit or anything to that effect. At all points in time, you always have to abide by the burn policy, the burn ordinance within town, which limits the size of your burn pit and limits what you can burn as well. So I'd ask anybody who has questions to please visit the town website or call fire headquarters, and you can be provided with that burning ordinance. We're fielding a number of complaints. There's some different things going on social media and so forth that we've tried to address. So again, in addition to several motor vehicle accidents, we did have one significant fire incident just the last couple of days. We had a fire at an apartment complex, Briarwood Hills, in which 4 families were displaced, and unfortunately the apartment itself, which burned out, with a dog perished in that fire as well. So fortunately there were no civilian or firefighter injuries that were reported. Since our last meeting, 64% of calls were EMS related, and approximately 340 incidents since our last meeting, 76 of which were overlapping, and that again seems to be consistent with about 22% of our calls overlapping. Regarding the budget, I've done some adjustments. There's a few things with the budget that I continue to ask the commission to keep in mind. Remember that our budget reflects only expenses related to the fire department. It does not reflect any income to the fire department. That appears elsewhere in the town budget. 2 expenses that our budget continues to show is one, the fire inspector, which is paid as a consultant rate. That is an expense coming out of our budget. That is not funded in any line. If you look at the town budget, there is no line there for that or in the salaries. It's paid for because it's compensated entirely through the permit fees. So it's no expense to taxpayers, but it does show as an expense in our budget because we cannot reflect income. So when I consistently kind of report on how much percent we are in the budget, we always have to keep in mind that 100% of our budget is 100% of our allocated funds, but yet this funding continues to come out. In addition to that, the Deputy Chief of Operations salary is coming out of our budget as well, and that was funded, as you may recall, within the contractual obligations line of this past fiscal year, but yet it is being drawn out of our budget. So when I backed those 2 figures out, we were at 85% for this year. When I backed only one of those out, because only one of them was occurring at this time last year, we were at 89%. So to give you some understanding. I have consulted with the First Selectman about having those salaries reflect somewhere in our budget. Again, both of them are being completely paid for. To give you some indication, we've started billing for EMS transports and intercepts as of November 1st. We're at over $100,000 in billable expenses at this time. And you'll cover that later on. So Deputy Chief of Operations salary is entirely being compensated for. And in addition to the fire inspector, since we've implemented those fees, we've collected over $1.1 million. And since our last commission meeting alone, we've collected $42,334 since our last meeting. So both of these salaries are fully funded. In terms of inspections, since our last meeting, 45 inspections occurred, 5 re-inspections, bringing it for a total of 50. There were 15 code violations found, 5 of which have since been corrected, and we reviewed 43 different plan reviews or permits since the last meeting. Regarding training, we continue to cover accountability. There's a new accountability system that's been purchased, and our members are actively training on it. If you think about accountability to fireground, it's one of the things that keeps a chief officer like myself awake at night, is knowing that during a major incident, being able to account for every firefighter who's on the fireground. And that's can be sometimes a difficult task, depending on the nature of the incident, the weather you're dealing with, the location. So we have a new accountability system that was purchased, and our members are training on it, and it needs to become muscle memory for them. So there's quite a bit of training. You may see accountability showing up in training for the next couple of months, and that's going to be why. We've put all of our members through a CPR renewal, and we continue to review truck company operations. And regarding executive session, maybe personnel matters for the commission that we can discuss shortly. And that's all I have for
Thank
Chief
you.
Report.
Any questions of the chief regarding his report?
No question, can I make a couple of comments,
Of
Mr.
course.
Chairman? One, I think you did a great job. You brought it down from 89 to 85% the budget. You reflected the monies that we are collecting from both transporting and the fire marshal service. Not only are they paying the salaries for both men, but we're also making a profit on it.
That's correct.
Which the town should be very happy where you're running this, like the way you are. And last but not least, there was an article in the paper, I believe, last week, that we're the only department that got a raise, an 8% or something. Well, that wasn't a raise. They just shifted the contractual overtime to a line item. So, I mean, that was kind of a false statement that the fire department received a raise. We have not received anything. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think what the article reflected was that the upcoming budget for the fire department had been increased by 8%, and you're correct. A percentile of that represents the separation of the contractual obligations from the overtime line item. But there were some additional percent increases on some line items, but you're correct. The majority of that was from the contractual obligations.
Correct. And they
Correct,
never
Chief?
noted, as we noted
Yeah.
just now,
This-
the chief has brought down the percentage of our spending, and he's increased our income.
Correct.
Yeah, the fund shifts that we're referring to in the budget, it's important to remember that long before there was even 8 firefighters on duty at a time, like I'm hearing about recently, that overtime line was not funded to its potential that it perhaps should have been. That was met every year during the annual, one of the annual town meetings, in which time more than $20,000 had been spent in that line, and the money had to be shifted from elsewhere in the budget into that fire department line to make up for that difference, because it was more than $20,000, which is a trigger to make it go to during the town meeting. That's kind of kept the fire department from ever being able to deliver a balanced budget before.
Right.
So the intent, as it was 3 years ago, and I again did this year, was to not only divide the lines, but to fund the lines appropriately, show how the lines are allocated in the accrued hours that justify those costs, and to fund the lines appropriately. Which what's basically happened is they've taken funding from elsewhere in the budget that normally has always supplemented this line and shifted it to our budget. But it's not it's an increase on paper. It's not necessarily an increase in spending.
Right. And for many years, we've been criticized as a department for being over budget. But again, from the accounting standpoint, the town, as the chief indicated, never truly appropriated the sufficient amount of dollars for the contractual obligations. And for the first time, the Board of Finance clearly understood the chief's proposal and did separate those two categories. So I think moving forward, my expectation is that this department will show a balanced budget.
Exactly.
I want
That's
nothing
what I
more,
want.
yeah. I want nothing more than to deliver a balanced budget.
Right.
But we need to do some work. We need to make sure those lines are funded appropriately. We need to make sure that the consultant that we're paying for through the inspections, that expense either has an income that appears once a year in the budget to show that it's being paid for, and the same thing with the deputy chief's position that's being paid for.
Right.
I can't deliver a balanced budget if the expense is always showing and there's never income, particularly to those two salaries.
Correct, correct.
That's what I wanted, that's what I wanted to bring out, to show that it does work.
Yeah.
The chief did bring it around where it does work. Thank you, chief.
Now, Chief, a question on the accountability system and the training. And I know the new vehicles for the deputy and yourself, one deputy and yourself, have the accountability boards. Is that in conjunction with this accountability training? So that way they're on a fire scene or a major emergency type of situation, you're able to pull out those big boards out of the back of your car, your vehicles, set them up, and now you have total command over where all of the personnel are. Is
Yeah,
that
so I'm
correct?
going to ask the Deputy Chief Operations to speak quickly more about the system itself, but if you recall up until recently, I didn't have a vehicle to even actively participate in scene accountability, which is one of the things that really gave me a hard time. And what that allows is be able to open the back. There's plenty of room inside now to be able to set up a command board, keep it out of the snow, keep it out of the rain. There was an incident not too long ago this past winter where, for the time being, we're using dry erase boards and grease markers, but it was so cold outside, the grease markers weren't even working.
Right.
So, I mean, you try to set something up in the back of an SUV so that you have some residual heat coming through, you have some light coming through, you're out of the snow, you're out of the rain, you're able to function as you should. You know, I mean, that incident alone, your hands get so numb that you can't even write after a while. So it does serve a function to have vehicles that are able to function at that capacity. But in terms of the system itself, I'll let the deputy chief refer to that, because it's an important step for us,
Absolutely.
if you want to cover what it is.
Well, it's called the Passport Accountability System. It's by a company out of the West Coast that actually started as an industrial accountability company for miners and people that are working in confined space. But just to low down a bit, essentially everybody gets their name printed in on 3 little Velcro strips that are very small. They're about a ½ inch wide by about 1.25 inches long. They're these 3 Velcro strips go underneath the inside of the firefighter's helmet by adhesive. And every apparatus in town has 2 Velcro loops that are stuck on the inside passenger door. When the firefighter mounts the apparatus, either for the beginning of his shift for our career personnel or when responding to an alarm, they'll take off the little Velcro strip on their helmet, 2 of them, they'll put 1 on each loop on the inside of the door, and then when the apparatus officer arrives in the scene, they'll take 1 of the loops and they'll hand it to the incident commander, and it Velcros right onto our newer command boards. In an instance like at Olbrook where the pens were freezing and we were using the Pelican case that I keep in my car, it'd be perfect because we couldn't write anybody's name down, and now it has their name Velcroed. It's incredibly cheap. I mean, it was incredibly inexpensive when you look at the different Salamander systems and the big ID card printers and stuff that people are purchasing. This was probably a third of the cost of a system such as that. Good turnaround, great customer service. We're just kind of slowly rolling out the implementation because it really does have a lot to do with the way we deploy our apparatus as well, which the chief and myself and the other deputy have been working on altering. So, but it's a good system, and we're looking forward to starting to implement it. And more importantly, it'll keep our personnel safe on the fire. We'll know where they are.
When will it be fully implemented?
I would really like to go live with a whole bunch of different projects by, say, mid-May. There's a couple things we have to wait for, I think, before it gets fully implemented. One is the new tower to show up, because we don't want to mount Tower 1 on the old truck, knowing that the old truck is going to become Truck 2. So
Right.
that's a big step. And we have some next-gen computer-aided dispatch issues we have to work out with how we deploy our apparatus. So I'm hoping middle to the end of May we'll be up and running fully with that.
Good, thank you. Any other questions of the chief regarding his report and the deputy? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to accept.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Correspondence.
I have no correspondence to report other than the routine day-to-day correspondence. Nothing remarkable.
Any commissioners receive any verbal or written communications? I have received multiple communications from residents pertaining to the chief's budgetary request for the 8 firefighters, and certainly regarding the 2 apparatus that the town attorney indicated needed to be replaced, and they were disappointed, to say the least, that none of those proposals that were proposed by the chief were included in this budget. We certainly recognize the financial concerns and restraints and the situation with the state, and certainly the Board of Finance, took it upon themselves to review all of the capital proposals as well as personnel requests from every department, and have come to that conclusion. But again, a number of residents voiced their disappointment that the fire department did not only wasn't allotted the 8 firefighters that they requested, there were none that were included. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. Discussion of unfinished business for the fire department.
Unfinished, I have on your agenda for this evening the CERT team, just to bring the board up to speed on this. The CERT team, first graduation class occurred on April 10th. Very well attended. I can't say enough about the leadership of the North Haven CERT team. It's a brand new team for North Haven. Again, it's a community emergency response team. And the leadership from North Haven, which is Al Jakes, Alice Bassinet, and Lori Varney, have done an incredible job of taking this initial inaugural class and getting it off the ground. There is so much positive feedback coming out of it, positive exposure and PR for the town and for the fire department. I can't thank them enough. We wouldn't have been able to do this without the great cooperation that we continue to have with the Hamden Fire Department and the Hamden CERT team. Their membership really provided guidance on how to get us going here. And you're gonna see CERT a lot. I know some of the commissioners are able to attend the graduation. You know, it's important that you understand that CERT is not part of the fire department. We cannot call upon them to activate and do very much without specific declarations by the emergency management director in town, which, are gonna be your more major disasters that occur. But they will be doing a lot of community support and a lot of public relations. So you will see them in T-shirts in the town green during a number of summer concerts. I ask that the commissioners, if you would like, introduce yourselves. They fall under the fire department in some aspects because I serve as the emergency management director, but they serve no purpose to the fire department. So just something to keep in mind as you move forward. They're not going to salute the commissioner. They don't know better. So please just keep that in mind. But they're an exciting group of individuals. They do a great job, and they have high hopes and high expectations. And I'm trying to tell them to hold off until we build the team up a little bit more, because there's another class that'll be starting in the fall, and they'll build up their numbers more, and they'll be able to do more. The ladder truck mid-con inspection, which is the midway point for this ladder truck to be completed, was conducted this past week. We expect to take delivery mid-May, and there will be a final inspection occurring sometime in the month of May. It will then make its way to Connecticut, at which time all the equipment which has been delivered will be mounted onto the truck, and it will be put in service shortly after. We have to do a number of training sessions here with the career staff. While this ladder truck is still a ladder truck like what we have now, it has some differences as well. And that was done so intentionally because for the next few years, we hope to have 2 ladder trucks serving the town of North Haven, and both ladder trucks have different operational limitations, and it's something that our membership is going to have to become familiar with. So that's on the way. Still hoping to have that in the Memorial Day parade. The FEMA Assistance to Firefighter Grant applications have made it through the first round. The first round of applications is where about half of the applications submitted throughout the nation are rejected. So both of ours at this point have made it through the first round. I'll remind the commission that those applications, one is for approximately 30 sets of structural firefighting gear with a washer and dryer specific for firefighter gear. And then the second application is for an engine, and the engine that I selected for the application for the grant was the Urban Interface engine that I've discussed at previous meetings and during my budget workshop. That, while it's the less expensive option, it's also provided us the best opportunity to pursue that through a grant because it changes the operations of the fire department. We currently don't have the means of going off-road or having four-wheel drive during a blizzard or anything of that effect. So in terms of the ability to write a strong application, I was able to really capitalize on the operations that an engine like this will do for the fire department. You know, on that, I like to just comment that it's been worded a few times that we're looking to get a tank, and kind of said in a derogatory fashion. This engine, while it certainly looks different than anything else we have in town, it still serves as a structural firefighter engine. I'm being very cautious of that to make sure that if this was the only engine left to respond to an incident, it can still perform as a regular fire engine. However, it does look different. And it looks different for that reason. It has a high clearance, and it's four-wheel drive, and it's a commercial cab. But it will still function as a structural engine should the need arise, but it serves two purposes. It's also half the cost. So I don't understand why it's being looked at from a derogatory standpoint by some members of the public when in fact it's half the cost of a regular engine.
You know, my expectation is that it's ignorance on behalf of whoever the persons are that have been speaking about that. The engine carries water, obviously, and tremendous need for us to make sure that we have another apparatus that carries water.
Yeah, and we have Peters Rock, we have portions of Sleeping Giant,
Sure.
We have the cattails off of 91, we have some larger woods in town. While we don't have a large volume of brush fires, we do have them occur, and when we do, our firefighters are bringing everything in by hand, which typically has happened during the hotter months, so that becomes very labor intensive, and we have to call outside towns to come with brush trucks.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that, again, I believe wholeheartedly serves two purposes and will serve the North Haven Fire Department well. So if we're successful in getting the grant, this would be the engine that would be pursued.
And certainly, I would certainly recommend, if any citizens in the town have any concern as to what proposals the chief has made and/or grants that he has applied for, feel free to contact the chief's office to get clarity as to what the purpose of that apparatus or piece of equipment or safety equipment that is being proposed will and how it will function for the department. Getting up at a town meeting or at a Board of Finance or a Board of Selectmen meeting and coming up with some personal lack of understanding of what the apparatus is going to do and why it was selected just doesn't make any sense. So feel free to contact the chief's office, for clarity on any of those proposals. Anything else, Chief?
Only other item I have, we covered it briefly, but I have listed on your agenda is the EMS building. Again, I just wanted to make sure the commission is aware. We seem to be hearing an awful lot about the expenses of the fire department lately, the income of the fire department. Again, a reminder that since November 1st, we've billed over $100,000. Now, with that, understand that there will be some inherent, what we call bad debt. Based on what we've looked at here in North Haven, that should be minimal. But again, you're looking at a fraction of the year, and we fully expect that billable services to continue to grow. We will probably not see the income coming in for that for another couple of months. Medical billing does take some period of time to work through insurance companies, but once the revenue starts coming in, it'll be 7 months, from when we build. It'll just continue from that point on.
Sure. Well, certainly, Deputy Martis, you've done an excellent job in creating this program and, handling contractual obligations as far as the billing is concerned, and a lot of the phone calls that are coming through.
Medicare is an interesting organization, I will say.
For those of us who are Medicare eligible, which probably is all of us, we understand. We understand. But thank you for that effort. Any questions of the chief regarding unfinished business?
Yes, Chief, the new truck you were just talking about, how much water are they gonna carry?
The new engine that we're talking about for the grant,
Mini pump or whatever it is?
it would have a minimum of 500 gallons.
They will carry
Yes.
that much?
Yep.
That's great.
And that's, again, that's by design, to make sure that if it's the only thing left on the south side of town, because the other engine that's there is taken out for maintenance or whatever, that I know that safely I can keep that engine there on that side of town, and if it's the first due to a house fire, it can still operate as an engine.
That's a good idea. Yeah. I didn't realize it was carrying that much water.
Yeah, no, I wanted to make sure of it. It is, yeah, and you think our current engine 1 carries 1,000 gallons of water. It's the only thing in the fleet that does. We have another engine that carries 750. Most of our engines carry 500, so this would be no different.
And certainly, as you've said, Commissioner, that engine is first on the scene. Our firefighters could immediately begin to, attack the fire. So, minutes are important. I think it's a marvelous suggestion, and hopefully we're successful with the grant.
I'll keep the commission informed. I don't expect to hear on that grant any further until probably midsummer. But I certainly, if I hear anything, I'll let you know. That the review panel is being assembled right now by various organizations throughout the country. They'll likely be traveling to Baltimore, where it's taken place in the past.
Okay.
And they review the grants from all across the country over the course of about a week.
Okay, very good. Any other questions as far as unfinished business? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
New business. I don't have anything listed on your agenda. I have 2 items quickly that have come up since this agenda was provided to you. The first, I just wanted to provide the commission on a quick update regarding the current state of apparatus. The Rescue 2, which is the older of the 2 rescues, although it's still perfectly functional. However, it did have a fire in the rear wheel area resulting from calipers that locked up while responding to an accident on I-91. It was extinguished with an extinguisher. I've seen 1 or 2 pictures floating around of flames and smoke coming from the rescue, so I wanted to make sure that in the event the commission came across one of those, that it was reported to you. The damage was limited to the wheel well area. Fortunately, as the firefighters, one firefighter arrived on scene, was able to start extinguishing the rescue, and the other one was able to continue to render care. But Rescue 1 remains out of service. It's been out of service more or less consistently for the last month. That is our new international. I'm pursuing a number of different avenues in terms of getting this corrected. It's covered in a warranty, so while it's no expense to the cost, it's certainly having an operational expense to us. Being without that apparatus for roughly the last month, it'll come back, they'll say it's all set, we'll put it back in service. A day later, the same thing's happening. It's experiencing some significant alarms taking place with the braking system. It's to the point, the alarms are so loud as they're meant to be that you can't even operate in the vehicle for any length of time. So as of right now, that vehicle is at Nutmeg International here in North Haven, being looked at for probably the 6th or 7th time. Again, it's all under warranty. However, in the meantime, it has an operational impact on us. So we were without Rescue 1 and Rescue 2 at this time. They've both been out. That has resulted in us, we typically like to use engine 5, which is here, as it is not able to be used as a pumper, and it's due to be replaced soon with the ladder truck. That takes too long to fill up with air. It has an air system in it, so it's not dependable enough to use for medical calls where we're trying to respond, and we respond 10, 15 times a day. So that stays here for use as the secondary means of just transporting firefighters only. We used engine 4 yesterday when both rescues went down, and engine 4 went out of service on its way back from Yale New Haven Hospital. So we're currently using engine 8. So, we are struggling to maintain a fleet that is aging. So I'm hopeful that the grant is successful. But I wanted to make sure the commission was aware of that.
Well, and thank you for that information, Chief, and it goes to some of the comments that some of the residents made and telephoned to me. They're concerned about not replacing the apparatus as the town attorney recommended. And again, we clearly understand that the Board of Finance is saying, if it meets the DOT requirements and it still starts up and goes, we should keep it on the road. But these are the kind of things that occur, as you all know. I mean, these vehicles are 25, 27 years old.
Some of the engines are 25-plus years old.
Yeah, and we're getting to a point where it might be roadworthy, but when it breaks down, it's it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get replacement parts. So I think as we move forward, we need to, as a town, keep in mind that we still have the same old trucks that are causing a significant cost as far as repairs are concerned, and operational issues, because obviously this week we've got 3 apparatus that are down simultaneously. We've got one that's in northeast here that's
Almost done.
it is down. Well, we don't use it for anything except for transport of personnel, but there's no hoses on it because it failed its test. So we continue to have the same old pieces of apparatus. Yes, we have a couple of new ones, one new one on its way, a couple that were purchased 5 years ago or so. But, the lion's share of our fleet is pretty old. So, again, we just need to make sure that the public is thoroughly aware of it. If and when the time comes when they are no longer roadworthy, we then go back to the Board of Finance through the Board of Selectmen and, potentially have to make an emergency purchase of a replacement. So, but obviously it wasn't available in this year's budget, as we originally indicated that the indicators were that they were going to replace both of those antiquated engines with a lease to purchase arrangement that was extracted from the proposal from the Board of Finance in this upcoming budget. So that's where we are as far as the apparatus is concerned. But just keep that in mind, please.
I'd like to make a comment that I personally, and I'm not speaking on behalf of this commission. If you want, you can speak on all of our behalves, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't feel comfortable putting a firefighter, paid or volunteer, on a piece of equipment that may or may not run or may not break down when these folks are going to a fire. Because these are fathers, their sons, and in the volunteer ranks, we have daughters, wives, girlfriends. It should not be incumbent upon them to risk their lives because the Board of Finance doesn't want to buy or fund 2 more trucks. So that's my piece, and I want to be on the record and on that camera as stating my position regarding this whole, it's just ridiculous. That the Board of Finance would want to, rather than cut money from the Board of Education, put firefighters, volunteer and paid at risk. It just boggles my mind.
I agree with you 100%, Commissioner.
I also agree with him. I mean, this is ridiculous that we're sending out our men, like Commissioner Zuccarelli said. There's fathers, there's sons, there's brothers, there's husbands, there's daughters, wives, girlfriends. We're sending them out. They're risking their life not only to go to the scene normally, but now we're sending them out in a piece of apparatus that's not roadworthy. Okay? We're breaking down. We have a fire. We have a rescue truck. That's how old is the rescue truck now?
Rescue 2 is probably 5, 6 years old.
All right, 5 years old, and we're already having problems with that. And now we have
It's a 2011.
apparatus that's 25, 26 years old that the town attorney has said we should replace. I mean, what does the Board of Finance want to oversee the Board of Fire Commissioners? They want to say no to us, they want to say no to the firefighters, and they want to say no to the town's attorney. Why do we have a town attorney? Why do we have a Board of Fire Commissioners? Why don't we just have the Board of Finance? And they can decide where every penny goes in this town.
Well, that's what they're doing now.
I mean, and they're just risking people's lives. What happens if, God forbid, one of our vehicles does malfunction and it rolls over because it's not up to today's safety standards, okay? And it rolls or blows up or something happens. I mean, what are they thinking about? People's lives worth anything? If we can't get to a scene and someone should die at a scene because we couldn't get there because of a faulty piece of equipment, I mean, we have an engine sitting right out here, 50 feet away. That's no good other than it's a big taxi cab. I mean, we could just call Uber and have them pick up our men. We're probably better off, it's safer. That's ridiculous. Mike's 100% right.
To hear the superintendent of schools at a public meeting say that we all know that teaching is labor intensive. I want to know what is fighting a fire. Is that not labor intensive? I think it's a little more labor intensive than teaching. with all due respect to teachers. But, you know, don't insult us with that kind of talk.
Chief, is there supposed to be some sort of law on the books or not on the books, but after so many years, you're supposed to replace that piece of equipment at any cost?
So there's,
Or is that just a lot of baloney?
there's never been law until House Bill 7047, which passed last year, went into effect in October. And that law references an NFPA standard. The NFPA standard, in the annex portion of the NFPA standard, references that apparatus should be replaced at 25 years old. And that was the information that was provided to one of the town attorneys to review. My understanding is that the attorney contacted numerous towns within the state to obtain their interpretation and to obtain their practice of replacing apparatus, and that is one of the factors that went into the letter that was provided to Board of Finance. Now, that's the only law that I know of that references that. You know, but we have, you know, we'll continue to make it work. The apparatus at this point, with the exception of engine 5 that's out here, which failed its mandated pump test, so we put the apparatus through annual DOT test inspections. We put them through annual pump tests for those that carry water. And if they fail either, and we do have engines that have failed pump tests, that we will then take a look and we'll say, okay, what's it going to cost to replace different aspects of this pump? You're usually looking at pumps that are in the excess of 20 years old, 25 years old. Sometimes it's not worth replacing. It's like anything else. You're going to fix this part, and the next part's going to go. At some point in time, you know, the pumps themselves fail, as is what happened with engine 5, and as what happened with the previous engine 2. You know, and we're going to watch to make sure that's not happening. We're not due to send engines again for those inspections until the fall.
Chief, if it was a school bus or two, they would be parked in the parking lot the next day. No ifs, ands, or buts, okay? But it's a life-saving piece of equipment, and I'm going back 45, 50 years ago. They treated us the same way. They didn't want to give us 10 cents. And here we are, 40 years later, we're still going through the same thing. We gotta beg for peanuts. We gotta beg these people.
Well, I'm assuming each of you have been following the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen meetings. In the public comments that have been articulated at those meetings, there are a number of citizens that have been very supportive of the fire department and public safety as it pertained to the personnel and certainly the apparatus. We know over the last number of years, there's been significant money has been spent on the fire department as far as the structures are concerned. This building that we're in has been renovated. Montauk is new. Central Station was redone as well as the Ridge. Obviously, and there was additional monies as far as equipment and apparatus that has been purchased over the last 10 years. But at this point, the chief's presentation during the workshop clearly indicated with all of the economic development that's taken place in town and the call volume that has continuously increased as was reported today, we're up to 1,457 calls. Was that correct, Chief? If I wrote that down correctly? You know, we have a very busy fire department. With the financial distress of the state, with the concern about raising taxes in town, there are a number of residents that feel that we could do the same amount of work with the equipment and manpower that we have. You know, look, it is what it is at this point. The control of the finances are by the Board of Finance. Certainly, we need to live and abide by what they're going to allocate to us. We could only do what we can do, but there's going to be consequences as a result. We're not responding to at least 1 or 2 calls a week, Chief?
That's correct.
Now, and let alone when the economic development and the building continues. Now, there's a group that's being put together by the Board of Finance. There's 2 members of the Board of Finance and the Finance Director, and the Chief will participate. And my understanding is that they've allocated $140,000 that's going to be placed in a line item that potentially will be used for the fire department. And I say potentially, because that's exactly what the Chairman, Rich Monaco, indicated. Potentially it will be used. They're going to discuss lower cost options to, operate and or provide services. I don't know what that is going to result in, but certainly I'm looking forward to the Chief's participation and his skill and expertise to contribute to that discussion. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But in the meantime, it's business as usual, ladies and gentlemen, as far as our fire department is concerned, and we need to do the best that we can with the equipment and the manpower that we have. And again, I think the residents of this town certainly have been made aware, based on the instruction of our first selectman to the chief and myself, to present the current and future needs of the department. I believe the chief has done that in a very clear, articulate way, in a very concise way, so that everyone is clearly aware as to what the needs are of this department. The question is, how do you pay for it? That's the bottom line. So I'm hopeful that as we move forward, we obtain some new equipment, and Mike Frieda clearly indicated if any of the apparatus do not meet the DOT inspections or fail the inspections or is not able to be repaired, we could bring that information to him, and he will present it to the Board of Finance as potentially an emergency purchase, as we've done in the past, and they generally honor that request. So that's where we are. I mean, it is what it is at this point, as frustrated as we all are. And I agree. I think it's very difficult for us to sit here and spend the amount of time, energy, and effort that we do as commissioners, not only during this meeting, but throughout the month, making sure that the fire department is running correctly, and another board circumvents our responsibilities and our authority. It's not a good feeling, to say the least.
I just want to say one more thing, and I don't want to belabor this any longer. You know, we use the term, we're gonna make an emergency purchase, and we've done that before. And who knows better than the chief? When we make an emergency purchase, this is not an item that we can go buy at Stop and Shop, Home Depot. We can't buy that. We have to order it. It takes a year to order it. When we need an emergency purchase, we take one off the line. 90% of the time, whatever's on the line doesn't fit our needs. So now we have to buy something that doesn't fit our needs, pay top dollar for it because it's an emergency purchase. Then we have to retrofit it the best we can, spend more money, and it still doesn't work. The last chief got stuck with the one engine one that we had to buy emergency purchase. How much do we spend? 30, 40,000 to retrofit it? It's still not right. So, we're kicking the can down the road. The Board of Finance, I respect everyone on that board as they should respect us. But this is not their expertise. They want to count numbers, they want to be so-called bean counters, that's great. The chief is the chief. If he says we need them, we need them. He's not just buying them because he owns the company. He knows we need them for safety. I mean, I don't want to be labeled this anymore. The town, the people in this town have stepped to the plate, they have given us a green light, they want to be with us. Unfortunately, the Board of Finance has shut us down. I think the people in this town should go to the first selectman, call up the Board of Finance, put articles in the paper demanding that they be safe. And they should listen to the chief. As Mike said, we listen, and I'm not taking money or funding away from Board of Ed. We listen to the superintendent when we need new books or new computers, or they need other things, desks. These are paramount. We need to have safety in this town. That's number one. The fire department is number one. That's it. It's number one. The buck stops on my street alone. Like we said, we're all senior citizens here. On my street alone, in the last 2 weeks, we had, I think, 8 calls on my street. 8 calls. My street, 8 calls in 10 days. Come on. It's ridiculous.
Well, your points are well taken, and look, we all understand the financial constraints of the town and of the state and of the taxpayers. It's entirely up to the residents of this town to speak up, as we clearly indicated throughout this budget cycle, this budget period. Again, it is what it is at this point.
I'll just, if I can,
Yes, Chief.
close out this conversation by just addressing a few comments and correspondence that I've been made aware of. I've been accused of trying to build an empire within North Haven Fire Department. I'd like to remind those individuals that might feel that way, that for the last 46 years, we've been running with 3 apparatus out of headquarters. 46 years later, we're running with 3 apparatus out of headquarters. I'm not trying to build an empire. I'm trying to make sure the town of North Haven is safe. And to do that, we can only stretch 3 apparatus with the call volume that we have so thin. We're the only department in town that has increased services and decrease in personnel. Because we have to take into account that even though our budget does not reflect an expense necessarily for volunteer firefighters, the value is in the budget for volunteer firefighters. Unfortunately, the national trend, the trend in Connecticut, the trend in this area is that the numbers are down. Everywhere, the numbers are down. So that was always part of our personnel in this town. It didn't reflect that in the budget, but it was always part of personnel. It was free labor that was being done. Unfortunately, as with so many other departments in the area, we're struggling, and because of that, we're relying more and more on career firemen to respond to all of the incidents in North Haven. I've also heard some rumblings of Mono East Station being built and being supposedly some big scheme. When you build firehouses to last the next 50 years. That's the expectation of the public. To this day, I hear how much the town spent on firehouses. Well, then I'd hope that we built them appropriately so that they could last for the next several years. Mono East was built for that purpose. Mono East covers a district that's the furthest distance from headquarters and has quite a significant number of residential living units. So it was built to accommodate future career staff someday. It's only prudent for us to look at putting career staff in an area of town that's our furthest travel distance and accounts for a good number of our calls. In the meantime, that station in the rooms in that station serve volunteers when they are on standby. And where do you want these volunteers sleeping when they do standbys overnights for storms? On chairs? So they serve that purpose in the meantime. So, it's just interesting to watch and listen to some of the comments. And that's all I'll say about that.
Well, just to put your mind at ease, those same people were making the same comments about Chief Ledizio.
Yeah.
And he was gonna put the town broke, the fire department was gonna put the town broke. Don't even pay attention to these people, because I certainly am not gonna pay attention to them, because they just wanna create obstruction,
Sure.
so.
All right, any other new business for the fire department? Hearing none, we'll move to the discussion of the good of the fire department.
Go to the department, I have one item listed on your agenda, which is firefighter of the year occurred this past Saturday evening. Congratulations again to the police officer and the citizen of the year, but particularly regarding the firefighters. The career firefighter of the year was Ben Fox, and the volunteer firefighter was Kurt Andrews, who was a active member of fire police. Not on your agenda, but something I want to make sure the commission is aware of is there's a benefit for one of our volunteer firefighters, Marissa Casella, taking place. I'd invite you to take a look at the Facebook page, which has additional information I don't want to disclose on this meeting, but it is taking place on June 3rd from 1 to 7 at the Irish American Community Center in East Haven. And tickets are available through Facebook, and there's some contact info on there for you to take a look at. That's the only thing I have for go to the department, those two items.
Okay.
I'd like to mention, under this section, go to the department, kudos should go to the union, firefighters union. As I saw somewhere, it was either on social media or it was one of the newspapers, that they have gotten a grant, received a grant to get these cards for seniors to place their medications and to magnetize them to their refrigerators. I think it's an outstanding idea. When these paramedics go and the senior citizens are there, so there's panic. The spouse may not know what kind of medication the person is taking, or can't remember a certain medication or whatever. This way it's written down, it's on the refrigerator, there's a big cross on it, so the firefighter, paramedic can identify it right away. So I just wanted to mention that. I think that was an outstanding grant that they received, and kudos to whoever wrote it up.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of that system is used elsewhere as well, and it's great to see that that's being continued. It's replacing a Vial of Life program that the union has been doing for decades, and this is kind of the new modern rendition of that. So you're absolutely correct. It's available to anybody. You don't have to be a senior, and it's available at fire headquarters. You can stop by anytime, pick it up. It's more or less an envelope, a clear envelope that very clearly shows paperwork inside related to your medical records. It has a magnet on it, and it can stick to anything, usually the side refrigerators these days, and within it contains all the information. The only other thing I have for you as well is another event coming up on May 4th is for active fire police member Steve Coulon, and I'll have details for you for that shortly. That's being assembled as we speak.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the department? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, April 24th, 2018 North Haven Fire Commission meeting. I'd like to ask if there's any public comments. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.